Rob Maaddi, what's going on, man?
Well, what's up, man? Good to talk some football. Been doing a whole lot of John Gruden stuff the past couple days, and it's a different thing, man.
I guess they're
Different
lucky they're
time.
not. The Eagles play the Raiders next week, obviously. If that would have been an
Yeah,
interesting circus playing them
yeah.
on Thursday night this week. But you are down there as well, and Tom Brady with this injured thumb. So what do we know about where Brady is and getting himself ready to play this game on Thursday night?
So yeah, I was at the Bucs game when they demolished Miami on Sunday, and early, I think it was in the second quarter, about 2.5 minutes in or so, saw him hit his hand on a helmet, and he was doing this a lot. But stayed in the game, threw for his first career 400-yard, 5 touchdown performance. He'd done both, but never in the same game. And then he finally, when they have a 28-point lead, sits out the last 7.5 minutes. After that game, very unlike Tom Brady, he shows up to the news conference with his hand wrapped. Today, he showed up with it really heavily wrapped. And he said, he said, this is not something I would have done in my younger days. And I think that's partly because Belichick would not have allowed it. Don't let them see you hurt kind of mentality. But now he's like, yeah, I don't care. He talked about it. It didn't hinder him against Miami. And Miami's got a strong secondary. Byron Jones, Xavier Howard, and he still threw for 400 plus yards and 5 touchdowns. 2 of those touchdowns came in the fourth quarter. So I don't anticipate this to be troublesome for him against the Eagles, but it certainly, I'm sure it swelled up a little bit. So, it's a short week. He doesn't have the full 5 days to rest. So you can see where if his ball starts to flutter or something's off, that thumb may be some sort of an issue. But he was effusive in his praise of the Eagles today, and especially that defensive line.
Yeah, I know that. But I guess I'll ask you this: you being a guy who followed the Eagles, closely here, and now covering the league as a more national scope, you're down there. Does anybody have a thought? Everybody has kind of had this feeling of Brady against Foles. They didn't shake hands and yada yada. That he really wants retribution on the Eagles for that loss in the Super Bowl.
No, he came back here and beat them with New England that year, 20, might have been 19, 2 years ago, I believe. It was a terrible game. He won like 17-9 or whatever it was. I have never seen an athlete in pro sports angrier after a victory than I saw Brady after that one. He was not happy with the way they played in that game. And yeah, that was his final year, in fact. And it was kind of like a prelude for how the offense was struggling. More fans in Philadelphia care about the Nick Foles snub and the handshake. Brady doesn't look at it as retribution. He looks at it as, hey, we got a game on a short week. And it's funny to me how much he mentioned this week and after the game on Sunday that they went on the road last year against the Bears on a Thursday night and lost to them in a short week. And if I had thought there might be a little letdown. It's been an emotional ride for the Buccaneers. They were in LA, and then they come back from LA, and they go on the road, and they're playing New England in the Brady Belichick Bowl, and then they're home against Miami, and now it's a short week. I thought, maybe it's you catch them in a letdown. But when you hear Brady harping on, hey, last year we went on the road, we didn't do well, and that still sits in his mind, he's going to make sure that the guys are ready to go. But they're banged up a little bit, Mike, defensively, and I think there's an opportunity for the Eagles to take advantage, especially now with Levante David out.
Yeah, I was going to ask a follow-up with that, David, before we look to the Eagles side of thing. Him being out, how much does that affect their defense? I mean, he's a pretty important player, but an important enough player that they should be concerned with the Eagles' offense, who don't run and don't throw the ball over the middle at all.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their injury report today too, and Jason Pierre-Paul was limited in practice, so he's banged up a little bit. Antoine Winfield was limited in practice. He's banged up. He's going through concussion protocol. Jamel Dean, cornerback, he participated. He's got the knee injury. Their secondary's been beat up, but when Levante David's not in, he's not out there. I think you can look for mismatches with Kenny Gainwell and Miles Sanders coming out of the backfield. And Bruce Arians talked about this the other day, how he was very high on Miles Sanders coming and running the ball, catching the ball, and talking about that. And I think the Eagles can exploit some of this with some of these guys banged up. And if you can get Dallas Goedert matched up against the backup linebacker, or however it turns out, their linebackers are the strength of the Tampa Bay defense, especially now. But now you lose a guy like Levante David, who's kind of one of their key guys back there. And there's opportunity for the Eagles to, I think, stay with them offensively. I think the Bucs are going to score some points, but I think the Eagles can score some points here against this Tampa Bay defense that has shown this year some susceptibility, especially against the pass, too, as well.
Yeah, we're talking with Rob Maaddi, who is covering the Eagles and Bucs, obviously. This game's Thursday night. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's look at the Eagles side of things. Let me get your take on what is happening, what we know, what we don't know, obviously, with Lane Johnson. Do we anticipate that his time maybe for this season is up? What's going on with him in the organization? Do you find it peculiar that, I mean, I know it's a personal matter, so people don't want to pry or ask, but that we still really have no resolution to what's going on there? In this day and age, is it odd that we haven't found out more?
Yeah, and Lane is a very talkative guy, and he's got a lot of friends in the media. And Lane's somebody who, he's very accessible. I can reach out to him and he'll text you back, right? He's that kind of guy. He'll reach back right out to you. He'll call you back. And you want to respect his privacy at a time like this. So you're not going to ask him what happened. You're just going to let him know that you're there for him. You're praying for him. But I'm surprised that it hasn't come out in any way, shape, or form what it has to, in general terms, do with. So when Nick Sirianni says the other day, he's hopeful, right, Mike? Hopeful that he's back this year. Man, I wonder. I really do. I still think at some point, he got 12 games left, and he'll be back. But we don't know what this is, and we don't know how serious this personal matter is. And for that reason, I believe it was something that happened like quickly, right? Because we expected him to play that Sunday, and he scratched from the lineup, and he leaves the Eagles. So it doesn't give me any indication or any clue to what it could have been, but it's not like something that was building, I don't think.
When you look at the Eagles win, they beat Carolina, they went on the road, it wasn't pretty. What does that kind of tell you about this team? They have 2 road victories. I mean, this is a team that's kind of not found an identity. They don't really know who they are, yet went on the road twice in the NFL and picked up wins. The last one against a team that was 3-1, and a lot of people started to like a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that kind of told you what the Carolina Panthers are. When they lose a game like that to the Eagles, there was some thought that, hey, maybe they can contend for a playoff spot. But I think when you lose a home game to the Eagles in the manner in which they lost it, Sam Darnold kind of reverted back to who he was with the New York Jets. But for the Eagles, it was a much needed victory. And the encouraging part is the offense struggled for much of 3 quarters, but the defense kept it together. And then the special teams comes up with a big play. And you're going to need that. You're going to need all 3 phases. As Nick Sirianni said, you're going to need that to show up to win football games. And what I think I know right now about the Eagles 5 weeks in at 2-3 is they're not good enough to beat the elite teams. And even though Kansas City's record stinks, their offense is elite. And I don't anticipate the Chiefs being an under 500, 2-3 team and not bouncing back at some point. But then you look at the Cowboys, who are 4-1. I don't think the Eagles are good enough to win a division or compete with the better teams in the NFL. But they can certainly beat the Falcons. They can certainly beat the Panthers. They were in it against the 49ers and lost because of self-inflicted wounds. Heck, they were in it against the Chiefs, and the offense couldn't capitalize, 3 negated touchdowns. So I think they're a team that's going to keep themselves in games, but they're not there yet, and they're not going to be there, I don't believe, at the end of the season when you're talking about playoff teams. But I really think this game Thursday night against Tampa, there's a shot to where they can surprise people and stay in it a whole lot longer to where they can make the Buccaneers sweat out a victory.
Well, I find it interesting because Jonathan Gannon was the guy who was really being criticized over the 2-week span. They gave up 83 points, to which I said on Friday's show, Rob, was, they gave up 23 points against Atlanta and San Francisco. You give up 83 against 2 offenses that are two of the premier offenses in the league. Let's see what happens when you play a team that is more the mean. Carolina is more of what's left on your schedule, right? Now, Tampa's different. I think the Chargers are different, and you have Dallas down the line. But most of the teams you're going to face the rest of the way are more in the Atlanta, San Francisco, Carolina. So it looks like John Gannon's defense is suitable to hold up against those type of teams. So then the question becomes, where is their offense? Who do they want to be offensively? What are they offensively?
Yeah, and if your defense is good enough to keep you in games against the non-elite offenses, your offense should be good enough to pull those games out and to win those, because we saw them rack up points and move the ball against the Chiefs. Now, against the Cowboys, some of those scores, they were a little bit in garbage time towards the end of the game, but they did move the ball. So I see with this offense a team that still won. You ask about identity, they're still searching for it, Mike. This is a team that I don't know if anyone else has given the ball to their running backs a fewer percentage of times. I tweeted it out yesterday, and I believe it was only 20-something, very low percentage where Kenny Gainwell and Miles Sanders have gotten handoffs. And that's they're still searching for their identity. And I don't know that Nick Sirianni can continue to come out there and think. Now, we know when they played against the Cowboys, he said, we're going to have to match up with them, their explosive offense, and that's why he justified throwing the ball and didn't run the ball. Well, you're playing Tampa, who is even more explosive than the Cowboys. Does that mean on Thursday night he's going to come out with an 85-15 pass-run ratio? Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you got to run the ball 50-50. I'm not even going to tell you got to run the ball 60-40. But there's got to be some semblance of balance. And there's got to be a way to keep the other team on the sideline. And when your running backs are averaging near 5 yards per carry, you got to give them the ball and chew some clock and help out the defense. So they're still searching for their offensive identity. And I still think Nick Sirianni's learning how to be a play caller on the fly. And sometimes he's got a couple nice play designs. And then sometimes his whole, you look at it and go, short, screen. What's going on here?
Yeah, I know that Sirianni, to me, has been a little bit of a problem as a play caller. As a head coach, how would you rank him?
I think he's got respect of his players. He's got leadership. He's got inspirational qualities. He can command the locker room. So as a head coach in general, Doug was like this. Doug was a leader of men. He was a leader of a team, but we questioned Doug's play calling at times, and rightfully so, because, hey, look at Carson Wentz last night. When you run the ball a little bit, when you give him some weapons, when the play design is nice, he throws for over 400 yards, albeit they lose the football game. But I think Sirianni, overall as a head coach, he's got the makeup for it. But it comes down to when you're a play caller, you got to make the right calls. You got to put your guys in a position to where you can maximize their strengths. And then sometimes, we saw a great scheme against the Atlanta Falcons, and every game since then has been questionable.
He's Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press. This was an interesting one. Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, Thursday night here in Philly. Obviously, Tom Brady, you might never see Tom Brady play in Philadelphia ever again after this. This will probably be the last time you get a chance. So check that out here on 97.3 ESPN. Rob will be back on Thursday to kind of give us some of the keys. You'll be covering this down in Tampa to give us some more perspective of what they're looking at this game. And are you coming up here for the game Thursday night?
I will be. I'll be landing sometime early afternoon. So I got you, man. I'll be right here at 5:25.
All right. Also, Faith on the Field Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, Sunday morning at 6:30. Can you give us a little preview?
Yeah, Buffalo Bills linebacker A.J. Klein, who has been a starter for much of his career. This year he began the season mostly on special teams, veteran guy. And he's back in playing a key role last week on the defense, shutting down somewhat the Kansas City Chiefs. And Buffalo's a pretty good team right now. They might be the cream of the AFC for sure. And nice little conversation with Buffalo Bills linebacker A.J.
I enjoyed your conversation with Emmanuel Acho this past week. So that was a good one. I'm sure this one will be a good one as well. Rob Maaddi from the AP back on Thursday. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, buddy.
All right, there goes Rob Maaddi. He'll be back to give us some more insight on the matchup on Thursday's show when he joins us here on the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill. Rob Maaddi's appearance is brought to you by Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City.